7 Vols invited to the combine. List those off for us, Caleb, and then I want to ask the question among those Vols, who will have the best NFL career? And a lot of times it is a surprise. Sometimes it's not, but a lot of times it's not the first guy picked. So, who are the guys right now that have been invited to the combine? And let's go through them one by one.
All right, so just to name them, starting off, Hendon Hooker, not a shock to anybody. Cedric Tillman, not a shock. Jalin Hyatt, not a shock. Darnell Wright, to anybody that's been covering him, not a shock. And Byron Young, not a shock. Jeremy Banks, not a shock. The one maybe surprise, Paxton Brooks, the punter.
Okay. Paxton Brooks up there. And I imagine Hendon Hooker will just be there for the medical. And he'll go through all the medical tests. I don't think he's going to throw. By the way, he was on the Pat McAfee show, and it was so uncomfortable. And shame on Tennessee for tweeting this out. I know Pat McAfee's kind of a big deal and all that, but Pat McAfee has him come out and opens it up with a GD, and you have Hendon Hooker is very religious. So regardless of what you think about language and whether GD is part of your daily lexicon, it's still, I mean, be mindful of the guy who is coming on, who is a very professed Christian. I just thought that was very off-putting, despite whatever religion you might be. So let's go through these guys. I want to play star, starter, or struggle. Okay, so each one you pick star, starter, or struggle. And star would be a guy that makes a couple of Pro Bowls, although that's not difficult to do now because everybody turns it down. I don't want to say all pro necessarily, but I think a couple of these guys might be. And then starter is a guy that hangs on in the league for 4, 6, 8 years and has a good career, but is never considered even a Pro Bowl or an all pro type of player. Travis says, read the room. Absolutely. And then struggle is a guy that's things have got to break his way for him to have a major impact. So you start us off, give me a player, and I'll tell you star, starter, or struggle, and then I'll get your thoughts. And I want to get thoughts from those on the message board as well. We greatly appreciate that. And I felt absolutely naked yesterday without my message board access. Still don't know what happened, but we're in there. So Smoky Mountain Red said, I think Pat does that on purpose. In my opinion, he mocked Tebow during the college playoff game. I didn't know that. I got a lot of respect for Pat McAfee from a professional business standpoint, doing what he did, leaving the NFL and starting up his podcast. But that I didn't know that, Smoky Mountain Red. That to me is off-putting, and I didn't really like that about Hendon Hooker. You wouldn't say something Jewish about if he happened to be Jewish. Anyway, don't want to get too sidetracked. But here we go. So give me one off the top. You want to start with Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, let's just go in the order that they were named. So let's start with Hendon Hooker.
Okay, let's save Hendon Hooker. Let's tease Hendon Hooker as the last one. That's a little trick I learned in the biz. So let's start with wherever you want to go other than Hendon Hooker, because I've got some pretty significant, strong feelings on him. Here we go.
All right, well, let's go the reverse way then. Let's go with Paxton Brooks.
Paxton Brooks will be a starter, I feel very firmly.
I'm with you. I know some of his averages were a little bit mediocre, but I think that had to do with Heupel's offense and then moving the ball so much. He didn't really have the chance to do what Dustin Colquitt had in 2003, which was just boot some giant, 60-yarders. So I'm with you. I'm sorry, starter on Paxton Brooks.
Absolutely. Okay, so, and it just seems that over and over again, you've seen punters make it, even some that were just at Tennessee for a couple of minutes. And that would be seeing Tommy Townsend out there a couple of weekends ago. So, it just seems like punters from Tennessee make it, carrying on the Colquitt tradition. All right, who's next?
All right, Jeremy Banks.
Jeremy Banks, starter. No question in my mind. He has the ability. He will be a starter, but I don't believe he will be a standout player.
I am, and maybe this is personal, but I'm going struggle. And I do believe intangibles matter. if you're not smart enough to understand some people make more NIL money than you in college, how are you going to handle the NFL where a lot of people are making more money than you? And also, Jeremy Banks is terrible in pass coverage. I can't stress that enough.
And the NFL is a passing first league even more than college football. So you
Yes.
bring up a very good point. I might steal that in a column coming up.
All right. Next, here's a tricky one. Byron Young.
Yeah, that is a tricky one. I'll say starter. I mean, I hate to go starter 3 for 3. Maybe I'm supposed to shake it up a little bit, but I'll go Byron Young as a starter.
I will too. I don't think he's ever going to be a star, and I don't think he'll start his first couple of years, but I think he's a hard worker. He really does what he needs to do, and he has the measurables to be able to be in the NFL, and he's a really good hard worker and a great guy. So I think that those things can really lead to you being a starter and hanging around in the league. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and the backstory, he's worked really, really hard to get to this point. I don't see him suddenly signing a middle round contract where he makes a few $100,000 and saying that's enough. I think he's driven to go beyond that, get to that second contract and make some real cash. All right, who's next?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go with Darnell Wright.
I'm going to say star. I believe that he will be one of the most physically gifted right tackles in the NFL, which is almost a backhanded compliment. It's like Andy Kelly being the all-time leading passer in the Arena Football League. Most of the great tackles play left tackle. Darnell Wright can do that, but he's a better run blocker. So they'll have him on the right side where you typically put those tackles. But I think he'll be one of the most physically gifted right tackles in the game. He'll also, if it comes up, will be able to flip sides and play left tackle. He can slide into guard, although I don't think that's going to happen. Travis says superstar. I don't know if you're talking about Darnell or Byron Young, but I'm with you. If it's Darnell Young, I go he will be a star. I don't have any doubt. I think he makes the all-pro team 2 or 3 years in his borderline Hall of Fame career.
I'm with you. I am so incredibly high on Darnell Wright. I think he's going to be a star too. I got to bring this up real quick, Dave. Think about this for a minute. Did you know the 2020 Tennessee football team that went 3-7? If you guys want to know why Jeremy Pruitt was fired, Cade Mays, Darnell Wright, Trey Smith, Wanye Morris, who just got invited to the NFL Combine, and Cooper Mays, who's going to the NFL, were all starters on that offensive line.
Wow.
Yes. And they went 3-7. And
those guys could all be NFL players for the next 5-6 years.
Yeah. Trey Smith is already a star. I mean, he should be a Pro Bowler if anybody's watched what Trey Smith is doing in Kansas City. And I'm with you. Darnell Wright's going to be a star. Don't know if Wanye Morris will be a starter, whatever, but he got invited to the Combine, and Cade Mays is on an NFL roster, and I think Cooper Mays will get there. So, yeah, Darnell Wright, absolute star. And also another great guy. Maybe not like a leader or a vocal leader, but a mentally tough, really good, hard worker and a smart player too.
All right. What else we got?
All right, moving on. We have, going to the weapons now, skill players. Let's start with Cedric Tillman.
That's a tough one. Because I think he's the most physically gifted between he and Jalin Hyatt. He might be the most physically gifted on this list that's about at the Combine other than Darnell Wright. But I'll tell you, there's some body language things. The fact that Tennessee's offense was better when he wasn't in the game last season, when he was injured, I'm going to say starter. And if I had to pick one that might end up being a bust, it might be Tillman, despite his athletic ability. Is that too harsh?
No, but so you are going starter still, though?
Yeah, starter, not a star.
Yeah, I'm going starter too. He's clocked in a 4.540. I don't think he's that fast, honestly. I don't believe that 40 time that he clocked. I think that he's physically gifted. I don't think he's fast enough to be a star. So I'm with you. I'm going to go starter. I think there will be a roster spot for him. I don't blame him for last year. I think it was just kind of Hooker had trouble acclimating him back to the offense and, was trying to, I think, force a few things his way because that was his favorite target and he, wanted to get him some balls. But, I mean, let's be honest, before he got hurt, Tennessee's not beating Pitt without Cedric Tillman. Cedric Tillman showed up, and he was the one that carried that team to victory against Pitt. And that was a huge win for them last year. So I will say starter.
Yeah, I think that you talk about 40 times. I heard a great story by Dan Orlovsky. He was being recruited by only one team, and that was UConn. And that's back when I covered UConn as part of my Northeast coverage. And UConn showed up, and he knew if he didn't get an offer from UConn, he wouldn't get an offer from anybody. So he said he ran a 5.840. So Randy Edsall shows up, and in order to impress him, he moves the end cone up in the 40-yard dash. He said he ran a 5.840, but he moved it up 5 yards, so he ran a 4.9. And Randy Edsall didn't notice it, and so he got an offer from UConn, and they ended up at UConn. I thought that was a hilarious story. It was a 35-yard.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and then so he shows up to UConn's camp, and he runs like the 5.6, and I'm like, what happened? He goes, "That was just a bad day." Go ahead. All right, so who we got next?
All right, so we got two more. This one, I might have a twist for you guys, but Jalin Hyatt.
I'm going to go Jalin Hyatt. I don't want to say everyone's going to be a starter, so I'm going to say struggle. I think that he was a product of the system, and I think that Jalin Hyatt has speed. But as important as that is, I believe that you have to be a great route runner, and I don't know that he necessarily is at this point. So my crazy message board, I've got Jalin struggles. Travis agrees with me, surprisingly. Caleb, you?
I fully agree with you. I think Jalin Hyatt struggles, product of the system. I didn't really see – I mean, again, Josh Ward kind of alluded to this, but we talked about Hendon Hooker not being as great throwing over the middle. I noticed they didn't call a lot of routes for Jalin Hyatt over the middle either.
It's true.
And so I feel like Jalin Hyatt was nothing but a vertical receiver, and you can't just be that in the NFL. You have to go over the middle a little more. And so and then there's the other thing, and I hate to go intangibles. Jalin Hyatt admitted himself he did not, he wasn't all in 2021. And if you can turn it off like that at certain times, I don't think that bodes well for you. You're going to be buried in the roster in the NFL when you first get drafted and have to work your way up. If you're the type where when you're buried in the roster, you're not as committed, you're going to be out of the league in a year. And
you're right. And there's really only one guy, and he improved his game as time went on. But there's really only one guy that was a deep threat to the point that you just couldn't stop him. That's Randy Moss. And there ain't no Randy Moss in this draft. And
no.
It's definitely not Jalin Hyatt. And all right, so who we got left?
All right, we close with
Hendon Hooker. All right. Hendon Hooker will be a borderline star, and I'm not trying to cop out on you. I just think you have. As Travis says, Hendon Hooker struggled.